My wife lied about inheriting $500K from her grandmother, only to find out she secretly loaned $200K to her shady brother. And now she's trying to erase me from our property rights in a bitter legal fight over the estate. I never thought I'd be the guy sitting here telling everyone I got played like a fool, but here I am. The craziest thing is, I thought I knew everything about my wife, Lisa. We'd been married for 7 years, and honestly I believed we had a solid life, good jobs, a nice house, a plan for the future. That was until I started noticing small things that didn't add up. Little lies, tiny inconsistencies. Nothing major at first, just enough to make me question her. But then I found out something that shattered everything I thought I knew about her, and about myself. It all started when I came home unexpectedly one evening. I'd been working late, and I decided to swing by the house before heading to the gym. I usually call ahead, but I was feeling off that day, so I just decided to surprise her. When I got inside, I immediately sensed something was wrong. The house was eerily quiet, and Lisa's purse was on the kitchen table, not where she usually kept it. I glanced inside, and that's when I saw the receipts, bank statements, online transfer records, all stuffed between her wallet and some old receipts from the grocery store. I sat down right there on the kitchen chair, heart pounding. I started flipping through the papers, and what I saw made me freeze. There was a transfer of $200, $0 to a bank account I didn't recognize, with a note attached, "Loan to brother urgent." My stomach sank. That's when I remembered Lisa telling me her grandmother left her a $500, $0 inheritance after she passed away. She'd been bragging about how she was going to invest it, pay off the house, maybe take a nice vacation. She always said she'd inherited that money honestly, that her grandma left it to her outright. But that's not what the bank statements showed. There was no inheritance, or at least no record of it. Instead, she'd loaned $200K to her brother Jake, who's always been a shady character. I knew Jake. He's the type who's always looking for a quick buck, never pays anyone back, and always has some scheme going. I'd seen him borrow money before, but never that much. It was a huge red flag, but I kept reading. Then I saw the real kicker. A transfer of another $150, $0, which was labeled as investment in property private. No details, no receipt, just a vague note. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. My wife lied about inheriting $500,000, but she secretly loaned $200K to her sketchy brother and sank another $150K into some unknown property. And she was trying to hide it all from me. That's when I decided I needed to know what was really going on. I confronted her that night. I made her sit down, and I laid out everything I'd found. Her face twitched, like she was caught off guard, but I knew better. She started with the usual, "It's none of your business. You're overreacting, and I was going to tell you, I swear." But I could see the guilt in her eyes. She looked at me with that bitchy smirk she's so good at, like she thought she was smarter than me, that she could lie her way out of this mess. She tried to spin it, saying she'd only loaned the money to Jake because he was in a tight spot, and she didn't want me to know because she thought I'd judge her. She claimed she was planning to pay it back, that it was all just a bad decision, and that her inheritance was still coming somehow. I didn't buy it, not for a second. The way she lied so smoothly, the way she looked at me like I was stupid, made my blood boil. I'd always trusted her, and now I felt like a damn fool. That night I lay awake staring at the ceiling, trying to process what I just learned. I felt betrayed, angry, and honestly a little hurt. How could she hide this from me? Why was she lying about something so huge? And what else was she hiding? The woman I thought I knew, the woman I married, was suddenly a stranger. It was like waking up to a nightmare. I kept asking myself, was she ever honest with me? Did she ever love me, or was I just some fool she married for convenience? All these questions swirled in my head, and I knew one thing for sure: things were never going to be the same again. The next few days were a blur of confusion and anger. I couldn't focus at work, kept replaying that night over and over in my mind. Every time I looked at Lisa, I saw her differently, like she'd put on a mask that suddenly slipped. She'd been so bitchy about everything lately, snapping at me over nothing, throwing tantrums when I asked about her day. but I'd always chalked it up to stress or her period or whatever. Now I saw it as her trying to hide her guilt, her lies. I started digging deeper. I needed to know more about her inheritance and her brother Jake. I pulled up her bank accounts, checked her emails, and even looked into her social media. I wasn't proud of myself, but I had to be sure. Turns out her story about inheriting that money was total bullshit. There was no record of any inheritance in her name. No will, no estate settlement, nothing. She lied about that from the start. The inheritance was just a cover-up, a way to make her look innocent while she secretly funneled money into her brother's shady schemes. I found out that Jake had a long history of bad loans, bounced checks, and shady deals. She'd been loaning him money for years, always in secret, always with some excuse. The more I looked, the more I saw a pattern. She was more involved with her brother's mess than I ever suspected. And now she was trying to erase me from the property, filing legal papers, trying to cut me out of the estate. I felt like I'd been hit with a ton of bricks. How deep did this go? Was she planning to leave me entirely, or was this just another of her manipulations? One day, I decided I needed to confront her again, but this time I was cold and calculated. I sat her down in the living room and I told her I knew everything. About the loan to Jake, the fake inheritance, the property she was secretly investing in, everything. Her face twisted into that bitchy sneer she always wears when she's caught. She denied everything at first, saying I was paranoid, that I was reading too much into it. But I had proof. I showed her the bank statements, the transfer records, and the emails I'd hacked out of her account. Her eyes widened and her facade cracked just a little. "You have no right," she spat at me, her voice trembling with rage. "This is my business. I don't owe you explanations about my money." That's when I realized she was willing to lie and cheat and manipulate just to hide her tracks. She told me her brother was doing fine, that he was just in a tough spot and she was helping him out. She said I was overreacting, that I was making a big deal out of nothing. But I knew better. I saw the way she looked at me, like she thought she could outsmart me, like she was the one in control. That's when I knew I had to do something about it. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about how she'd lied so easily, how she'd betrayed me for her brother's sake. I started to feel a mix of sadness and anger, sad that the woman I loved was capable of so much deception, and angry that she thought she could get away with it. I wondered how much more she'd do, how far she'd go to keep her secrets. I'd been naive, believing in the perfect wife, the perfect marriage. Now I saw it was all just a facade. The betrayal cut deep, and I knew I had to decide what to do next. I realized I couldn't trust her anymore. Not with my money, not with my future, not with my heart. I'd been played, and I had to figure out whether I was going to fight for what was left or walk away completely. The only thing I knew for sure was that my life was about to change forever. Over the next few days, I threw myself into figuring out what I should do. My mind kept racing between anger, betrayal, and a strange sense of numbness. It was like I had been hit with a wrecking ball, and now I was just trying to pick up the pieces. Lisa, of course, kept acting like nothing was wrong, throwing her bitchy attitude around, snapping at me whenever I brought up the subject. She insisted she was doing what she had to do, that her brother was in trouble and she was just helping him out. That was her favorite line, just helping him out, like that. Made everything okay, but I wasn't buying it anymore. I knew her lies were deeper than I thought, and her story about the inheritance was just a cover-up. She'd been secretly funneling money into Jake's shady ventures, probably to cover his debts or to keep him quiet. And she was trying to erase me from the property because she knew I'd find out everything. I could see her scheming behind that bitchy smile of hers, trying to come up with some way to spin it all again. I realized I had to get ahead of her. One afternoon, I decided I needed to get legal advice. I contacted a lawyer who specialized in estate law, and I laid everything out: her secret loans, the fake inheritance, her attempt to cut me out of the property. The lawyer listened carefully, then told me I might have grounds to challenge her in court. Apparently, her forging documents or hiding assets could be grounds for legal action. That was the wake-up call I needed. I wasn't just going to sit back and let her screw me over. I also started digging into her financial history. I hired a private investigator to look into her Brother Jake and her financial dealings. Turns out Jake was deep in debt, involved in some very shady deals, money laundering, illegal loans, even some connections to organized crime. Lisa had been helping him hide assets, funneling money to him, and now she was trying to wipe me out so she could keep her secrets buried. I felt sick. How could I have married someone who was capable of this level of deception? And what kind of monster was her brother? That night, I confronted her again. This time I didn't hold back. I told her I knew everything about the loans, the inheritance, her plans to cut me out. I told her I was going to fight her in court, that I had enough evidence to prove her deception. Her face went pale, then flushed with anger. She yelled at me, calling me crazy, accusing me of invading her privacy, of trying to ruin her. But I stood my ground. I told her I wasn't going to be played anymore. If she wanted to keep lying, I'd make sure everyone knew the truth. She stormed out of the house that night, slamming the door behind her. I sat alone in the dark, feeling a strange mix of relief and dread. Relief that I was finally taking control, and dread because I knew the battle was just beginning. I looked at the pile of evidence I had gathered, bank statements, emails, legal documents, and realized I was ready to fight for what was mine. This wasn't just about money anymore. It was about trust, integrity, and the woman I thought I knew. I kept asking myself, how did it all go so wrong? How did she go from being my loving wife to someone willing to lie, cheat, and manipulate her own family just to cover her tracks? I didn't have an answer, only a determination to see this through. I was done being the naive husband. Now, I was the guy who was going to get to the truth, no matter how messy or ugly it got. The days that followed were a whirlwind. I spent every free moment with my lawyer, going over every piece of evidence I had collected. It was clear Lisa was trying to push me out of the picture completely, filing papers to claim full ownership of the house, trying to hide assets, and even attempting to change the estate's legal documents. I couldn't believe how far she was willing to go. It was like she thought I was some idiot who wouldn't catch on, but I wasn't about to let her erase me from our life together or from what was rightfully mine. Meanwhile, Lisa kept up her bitchy attitude, throwing tantrums, calling me paranoid, accusing me of trying to ruin her. I could see her panic starting to show through her bitchy veneer. She was desperate, and honestly, I didn't care anymore. I knew her game. She was trying to spin it to make me look like the bad guy, but I had the evidence. Her lies were crumbling, and she knew it. One evening, I decided to confront her directly. I called her and told her I was coming over. When she answered, she sounded annoyed, like she didn't want to deal with me. But I wasn't about to back down. I told her I knew about her secret loan to Jake, her fake inheritance, and her plans to cut me out of the estate. I told her I'd fight her in court, and I'd expose everything if I had to. There was silence on the other end, then she finally snapped. "You're crazy," she spat. "You've got no proof, and even if you did, I don't care. This is my life, and I'll do whatever I want. If you try to take me to court, I'll fight you every step of the way. You think you're so smart, but you're just a jealous idiot who's too stupid to see what's really going on." Her words hit me like a punch, but I kept my cool. I told her I'd see her in court, and I hung up. The next day, I filed the paperwork. I was finally taking legal action to protect my rights. The process was slow, but I had enough evidence to make a strong case. I was determined to expose her lies and get her to admit what she'd done. I also started talking to some of her family members, people who knew about her brother's shady dealings. I needed allies, and I needed to make sure everyone knew the truth. Meanwhile, Lisa's behavior became more erratic. She started to lash out more, accusing me of betrayal, calling me a jealous, insecure loser. But I didn't care about her insults anymore. I knew what was real, and I knew I wasn't the one who had been dishonest. I felt a strange mixture of anger and relief, anger that I'd been played and relief that I was finally doing something about it. One night, I caught her trying to sneak out of the house with a folder of documents. She looked panicked, like she was trying to hide something. I blocked her path and demanded she tell me what she was doing. She snapped at me, calling me paranoid, saying I was just trying to control her. But I knew better. I grabbed the folder and looked inside. It was full of legal papers, bank statements, and some handwritten notes that confirmed she was planning to transfer assets into her brother's name, trying to hide everything before I could catch her. That was the breaking point. I realized I couldn't trust her anymore, not even a little. She was willing to lie, cheat, and manipulate her own family just to save herself. I saw her for what she really was, a selfish, manipulative woman who'd do anything to keep her secrets buried. I knew I had to finish what I started to get her out of my life and protect what was rightfully mine. I was done being played. It was time to fight for my future, even if it meant tearing everything apart first. The legal battle dragged on longer than I expected, but I wasn't about to back down. Every day I felt more confident that I had the truth on my side and that Lisa's lies were crumbling. Still, it was exhausting. She kept trying to spin her stories, act innocent, and pretend she was the victim. But I could see through her bitchy facade now. She was panicked and her anger was turning into desperation. One afternoon, I got a call from my lawyer with some shocking news. Apparently, Lisa had filed her own legal claims, trying to claim full ownership of the house and the estate, claiming I had no right to any of it. She had hired her own attorney and the fight was about to get nasty. I sat there stunned. I knew she was capable of anything, but seeing her take such aggressive steps made my stomach turn. She was willing to burn everything down just to save herself. That night, I decided I needed to confront her one last time face to face. I went to her place, knowing she'd be there trying to finalize her schemes. When she saw me, her bitchy smirk returned, but this time it was tinged with real fear. I looked her in the eye and told her I had all the evidence, that I was going to expose her in court, and that she couldn't keep lying forever. She snapped back, trying to guilt-trip me. "You're just jealous because I don't want to be married to a loser who can't handle the truth," she spat. "Trying to ruin me because you're insecure." I shook my head. I'd heard enough. I told her I was done playing her game, that I was serious about fighting for what's rightfully mine. I said if she kept acting like this, I'd make sure everyone knew what she'd been hiding, her lies, her secret loans, her shady dealings. And then she did something I didn't expect. She yelled at me, calling me a controlling, jealous asshole, and then she stormed out, slamming the door behind her. I stood there, breathing hard. I knew I'd made my point. I wasn't going to be manipulated anymore. I had enough evidence to take her to court and fight for my rights. The next few weeks were tense. I kept gathering more proof, coordinating with my lawyer, and preparing for the inevitable showdown. Meanwhile, Lisa's behavior only got worse, more erratic, more bitchy. She kept trying to smear me, calling me crazy, saying I was trying to ruin her life. But I didn't care. I knew the truth, and I knew I was about to win. One day, I received an unexpected call from her lawyer. The judge had scheduled a hearing. It was finally going to be decided whether I'd get my share of the house and the estate, or if Lisa would manage to push me out altogether. I felt a strange mixture of nervousness and relief. I knew this was the endgame. Either I'd finally get what was mine, or she'd succeed in burying me under her lies. As I prepared for the hearing, I reflected on everything: the lies, the betrayal, the deception. I realized I'd learned a lot about trust and about the kind of person Lisa really was. I'd been naive to think she was perfect, but now I saw her for who she really was: a manipulative, bitchy woman who would do anything to protect her secrets and her brother. I knew I'd never let her get away with it. I was ready to fight for my future, no matter how ugly it got. The day of the court hearing finally arrived, and I felt like I was walking into a battlefield. My lawyer had everything organized: proof of her lies, the forged documents, the evidence of her secret loans, and all the financial transactions she'd tried to hide. Lisa showed up, looking confident, but I could see the fear behind her bitchy smirk. She still thought she could manipulate her way out of this, but I knew better now. The judge listened carefully as my lawyer laid out all the evidence, exposing every lie Lisa had tried to hide. We presented the bank statements, the transfer records, the emails, everything that proved she'd been secretly funneling money to her brother and trying to wipe me out of the estate. Lisa's lawyer argued her case, but it was clear she was on shaky ground. The judge asked tough questions, and Lisa's composure cracked under the pressure. She tried to deny everything, but the evidence was Overwhelming. Finally, the judge made her ruling. She awarded me a significant portion of the estate, including the house, and declared that Lisa's attempts to manipulate the legal process were invalid. She also ordered Lisa to pay back the money she'd secretly loaned to her brother, plus interest. As the judge read the decision, I felt a wave of relief wash over me. I'd fought hard, and justice was finally on my side. Lisa's face twisted into a mixture of rage and disbelief. She had lost, and her bitchy attitude vanished for a moment. She stormed out of the courtroom, screaming about how I was ruining her life, but I didn't care. I knew I'd done what was right. I'd exposed her lies, protected my rights, and finally taken control of my life again. In the weeks that followed, I moved out of the house. I couldn't live with someone who had lied to me, betrayed me, and tried to erase me. I sold my share of the property, took what I was owed, and started rebuilding from scratch. It was painful, knowing I was betrayed by someone I'd loved and trusted, but it was also a relief. I finally felt free. Looking back, I realize I learned some harsh lessons. Trust is fragile, and people can hide their true selves behind a bitchy smile or a carefully crafted lie. I also learned that sometimes you have to fight for what's right, no matter how ugly it gets. Lisa's betrayal showed me how far someone can go to protect their secrets, but it also taught me that honesty and integrity still matter, even when the world feels like it's falling apart. So if you're ever in a situation where you feel betrayed, remember, don't ignore the signs. Dig deep, gather your evidence, and don't be afraid to fight for what's right. Because in the end, the truth always comes out, even if it takes a little chaos to get there.